Good day everyone, this is Marjorie Important. For today's video, let's tackle about the four topics. First is the curriculum and the curriculum development. Second is the constructively aligned and developmentally sequenced learning programs, experiences, and instructional processes. Third is the contextualized learning programs or instructional plans. Fourth is teaching strategies that are inclusive of learners from indigenous group. And the last one is selection and use of tools appropriate for monitoring, critiquing, and assessing instructional plans. So first, let us discuss the curriculum and the curriculum development. So when we say curriculum, it refers to the lesson and academic content taught in a school or in a specific course or program. It involves a variety of elements including the learner objectives, the teaching, learning, and assessing method used, and the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that the school or program seek to instill in its student. While the curriculum development it is a process of designing or arranging an organized presentation of these educational activities for students. And now we have here the 5 processes that involved in the several steps. First is identifying the needs. The first step in curriculum development is to identify and define the learning needs of the students the curriculum is intended for. This could be through surveys, assessments, or the other forms of data collection. Second is setting goals and objectives. Once the needs have been identified, the next step is to set the goals and objectives for the curriculum. This should be specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and the time-bound, or the SMART or the SMART. Third is the content selection and organization. This involves the choosing and organizing the content to be taught. This could be based on the subject matter, skills, or the other criteria. Fourth is the instructional methods. This involves deciding on the teaching methods to be used, such as the lectures, discussion, project-based learning, and more. The last one is the assessment and evaluation. This involves determining how students' learning will be assessed and how the effectiveness of the curriculum will be evaluated. So let's consider a situational example. Suppose a school in the Philippines has identified a need of a curriculum that enhances the students' criteria or the students' critical thinking skills. The curriculum development teams could start by setting the SMART or the SMART goals related to critical thinking. They could then select the content that requires critical thinking such as a complex problem-solving task or the debates. The instructional method could include the collaborative learning and the inquiry-based learning. They could decide to assess students' critical thinking skills through written and assignment and presentation, evaluate the curriculum by tracking students' progress over time, and seeking a feedback from students and the teachers. For the second lesson, it is all about the constructively aligned and the developmentally consequenced learning programs, experiences, and instructional processes. Constructively aligned is an educational principle that hold that learning activities and assessment tasks should be directly aligned with the desired learning outcomes. In the other word, what you want the students to learn should directly influence what you do in the classroom and how you assess the students. For example, if the desired learning outcomes is for the students to be able to analyze a piece of literature, the learning activities might include reading and discussing various pieces of the literature. And the assessment task might include writing an essay in which the students analyze a piece of literature. On the other hand, developmentally consequenced learning program refers to the learning experiences and instructional processes that are designed to match the developmental stages of the learners. This means that the learning activities and the assessments are appropriate for the age and developmental level of the students. For instance, in a primary school setting, a teacher might introduce basic mathematical concepts like addition and subtraction for the younger students, while progressively introducing more complex concepts like multiplication and division as the students grow older and their cognitive abilities develop. The third topic is all about the contextualized learning programs or the instructional plans. The contextualized learning programs or the instructional plans that are the educational strategies that connect classroom lesson to the real-world situation and application. The goal is to make learning more meaningful and relevant to students by relating it to their own lives and experiences. For example, if a teacher is teaching a lesson on fractions in a math class, they might contextualize the lesson by relating it to cooking or baking. The teacher could ask the students to double the recipe that requires 1/2 cup of an ingredient, prompting them to apply their understanding of fraction in a practical or in a real-world context. This makes the learning experience more engaging and meaningful for the students, and it can help them to understand why the skills they've learning are important. In essence, contextualized learning programs involve teaching tradition academic content in a way that connect to the real world and to the students' own experiences. This not only make learning more engaging, but it also helps students to understand the practical applications of what they are learning. The fourth topic is all about the teaching strategies that are inclusive of learners from indigenous group. Inclusive teaching strategies that incorporate learning from indigenous group are crucial in creating a diverse and respectful learning environment. So we have here the 4 strategies, and these strategies can help in acknowledging and respecting the rich cultures, knowledge, and perspective that indigenous group bring into the learning space. So first is incorporating indigenous knowledge and perspective. This could involve integrating indigenous histories, cultures, and contribution into the curriculum. For instance, in history lesson, the teacher could include content about the local indigenous history and the contribution to society. Fourth is community engagement. The teachers could invite indigenous elders or the community leaders into the classroom to share their knowledge and experiences. Like for example, an elder could come to the class to share traditional stories, practices, or teach a local indigenous language. Third is all about the cultural sensitivity and respect. Teachers should strive to create a culturally sensitivity and respectful learning environment. This could involve the acknowledging and respecting indigenous traditions and costumes, and teaching students to do the same. For instance, a teacher could start the class with traditional indigenous greetings or acknowledgement for the traditional owners of the land. And the last one is the experiential learning. This involves the learning through the direct experience or by doing. For example, the students could participate in a field trip to a local indigenous community or the cultural site, where they could learn about the traditional practices such as the weaving, pottery, and farming. Also, the goal of these strategies is not only to teach the students about the indigenous cultures, but also to foster a respect and appreciation for the cultural diversity. It's all about the creating an inclusive, respectful, and culturally diverse learning environment. The last topic is all about the selection and use of tools appropriate for monitoring, critiquing, and assessing instructional plans. So, the monitoring, critiquing, and the assessing instructional plans is the crucial part of educational process. It helps to ensure that the teaching methods are effective and the students are learning as intended. So, we have here the 5 examples for the teachers to help them to monitor their students. So, first is the observation. One of the simplest and the most effective tools for monitoring instructional plans is observation. Teachers can observe students during the lesson to assess their understanding and engagement. For instance, the teacher might look for sign of the confusion or the disinterest among the students during the lesson. If many students seems confused or the disinterest, the teachers might decide to adjust the instructional plan. Second is the feedback surveys. This can be used to gather feedback from the students about the instructional plan. For example, a teacher might distribute a survey asking students to rate the effectiveness of different teaching methods or to provide suggestion for the improvements. Third is the quizzes and tests. This can be used to assess students' learning and the effectiveness of the instructional plan. If many students perform poorly on a quiz or test, it might indicate that the instructional plan needs to be adjusted. Fourth is the peer review. This involves that having other teachers or the educators review and critique the instructional plan. Like a teacher might ask to a colleague to observe a lesson and provide feedback on the instructional plan. Last is the self-reflection. The teachers can also reflect on their own teaching practices to assess the effectiveness of the instructional plan. For example, a teacher might keep a teaching journal in which they reflect on each lesson and considered ways to improve. Okay, the goal of these tools is to ensure that the instructional plan is effective and that it promotes students' learning. It's all about continuous improvement and striving to provide the best possible education for students.